If you're one of those people who believe every African tradition is just entertainment, listen to this story because this story is exactly for you. Because what happened to Kamsi started the same way many dangerous things start, with curiosity, pride, and the confidence that nothing spiritual can follow you once you leave a village. But by the time she realized something had truly followed her home from Aruchuku, even sleeping with the lights on no longer helped her. The first sign appeared 3 days after she returned from the festival. Kamsi woke up around 3 a.m. with the strange feeling that somebody had poured sound across her bed while she slept. At first, still half asleep, she scratched her arms absent-mindedly and tried turning to the other side of the bed, but the irritation became worse immediately. Her skin burned badly. She sat up with annoyance, switched on her bedside lamp, and froze instantly. Her entire left arm was covered in thin reddish marks, not random scratches, marks, long narrow lines crossing each other like something sharp had dragged repeatedly across her skin while she slept. Kamsi stared at her arm in confusion. What kind of nonsense is this? She touched one of the marks carefully, and immediately she felt pain. It was fresh, very fresh. The room suddenly felt too quiet. Outside her window apartment, Port Harcourt remained unusually quiet for that hour of the night. No generator sounds, no passing keke, nothing. Kamsi stood up slowly and walked towards the bathroom mirror. The moment she saw herself clearly under the light, fear tightened inside her chest immediately. There were more marks, one near her collarbone, another across her stomach, and the strangest part was the shape. They looked almost deliberate, almost like symbols. Kamsi swallowed hard. She tried forcing herself to think logically. Maybe she scratched herself unknowingly while sleeping. Maybe an insect entered the room. Just maybe. Then she noticed something on the floor near her bed, dried leaves. Her breathing stopped. There were dried, ruffled strands scattered beside the bed. Kamsi stared at them slightly. Her apartment was locked. All her windows were locked too because rain had fallen heavily that morning. Slowly and very slowly, she bent down and picked one strand carefully. It smelled strange, just like old dust and smoke. Immediately, the memory of the masquerade returned sharply inside her mind. That same rough raffle brushing against the ground during the festival, that same smell. Kamsi dropped the strand immediately. No! She shook her head quickly and stepped back from the bed. Oh no, 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 no. Her heart had been beating fast now. She grabbed her phone immediately and dialed Nengi. The call connected after several rings. Kamsi, do you know what time it is? Nengi said. Kamsi's voice shook slightly. Something is happening inside this house. Nengi became quiet immediately. What happened? Kamsi explained the marks, the raffia, everything. There was silence briefly on the line before Nengi finally sighed heavily. I told you to delete that video. Please stop saying that. Kamsi, I'm serious. And I'm telling you this thing is becoming weird. Nengi lowered her voice slightly. Did you watch the footage again? Kamsi hesitated. Yes, after I warned you. I needed to edit the video. Jesus Christ. Kamsi rubbed her forehead tiredly. Nothing happened while filming there. That's what's confusing me. The masquerade never even came close to me physically. Maybe that's not when it started. Those words stayed inside Kamsi's mind long after the call ended. Because deep down, that was what disturbed her the most. The footage. Something about the footage was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, despite sleeping barely 2 hours, Kamsi still forced herself to continue editing the video because the views were growing too fast to ignore. Her teaser clips from the festival had already crossed several 100,000 views online, and people kept asking for the full vlog. That kind of traffic could change everything for her channel. Brand deals, subscribers, money. So she ignored the fear, ignored the marks, ignored the strange feeling inside her chest, and continued editing. At first, everything looked normal. The market scenes, women dancing, children chasing masquerade around the village square. dramas, cultural displays. The footage looked beautiful, honestly, rich, authentic, exactly the kind of content audiences loved watching online. Then she reached the part where the masquerade appeared. Immediately, the atmosphere inside the footage changed. Even watching it during daytime inside her apartment, Kamsi felt uncomfortable. The masquerade looked taller on camera than she remembered in real life, much taller. The villagers around it looked nervous too. Kamsi frowned. She did not remember that part. During the actual festival, she remembered people celebrating, normally before things became tense later. But inside the footage, the tension already existed immediately the masquerade entered the market square. The drummers looked uneasy. Women moved backwards. Some men lowered their heads completely. Kamsi paused the video. What? She dragged the timeline backward and watched again carefully. Then she noticed something else. The masquerade was not moving normally. At the festival, she remembered it walking slowly across the square like every other masquerade. But inside the recording, it was gliding, not walking. Its feet never touched the ground. Kamsi sat upright immediately. A cold feeling spread slowly across her body. No! She replayed it again, this time slower. The masquerade moved through the crowd silently while its raffia floated above the ground, not touching properly. Kamsi's mouth went dry. She grabbed the camera itself immediately and began checking the raw footage directly, hoping maybe the edited file had corrupted somehow. But things became worse, much worse, because the raw footage showed things she was completely sure never happened physically. At one point in the recording, the masquerade suddenly stopped moving and turned directly towards the camera. Kamsi remembered that clearly. But what came next? That part she did not remember at all. Inside the footage, the camera tilted its head slowly. Then it started walking directly towards her. Not fast, slowly, intentionally. The camera began shaking badly as her own frightened breath filled the speaker. Kamsi frowned deeply. That's not possible, because she remembered exactly what happened during the festival. One elder had pushed her backward immediately after she filmed the masquerade too closely. The thing never walked towards her physically, it never reached her, but inside the footage, it kept coming closer, closer and closer, until the marks filled the entire screen. Kamsi's breathing became shallow, then suddenly the video glitched violently. Static filled the screen. The audio distorted, and through the distortion, she heard something that made her blood run cold instantly. Whispering, very faint whispering. At first she could not hear clearly, then slowly the voices became understandable. Not one voice, many voices, all speaking together. She saw it. She carried it. She opened the road. Kamsi jerked backward from the laptop immediately. At that exact moment, something knocked against her kitchen wall loudly. Kamsi jumped violently. The sound came again, this time stronger, like something hitting the wall from inside. Her breathing stopped completely. The apartment became silent again. Kamsi remained frozen on the couch, listening carefully. Then she heard it, a bell far away at first, tiny, faint but unmistakable. The sound of masquerade bells. Kamsi's eyes widened slowly. The sound continued faintly outside. The exact same bell she heard during the festival procession in Aruchuku. Only now, she was hearing them outside her apartment in Port Harcourt. At 3 p.m. in the afternoon, Kamsi stood up slowly and walked towards the window carefully. The bells continued. Her hands trembled as she pulled the curtain slowly. The streets outside looked normal. Children playing football, women buying things from road traders, nothing unusual. Then she saw it. At the far end of the street near the junction, something tall stood motionlessly under the hot afternoon sun. Kamsi's heart nearly stopped. Even from that distance, she recognized it immediately. Black raffle, tall frame, long marks, the masquerade. Standing completely still, facing her building directly, Kamsi stepped backward from the window instantly. No! The bell stopped immediately. Silence filled the apartment. For almost 1 full minute, Kamsi could not move. Then slowly, against her better judgment, she returned to the window again. The junction was empty, the masquerade was gone. But something else had appeared instead. A small group of children stood near the road now, and all of them were staring directly at her window. Kamsi did not leave her apartment for the rest of that day. Even after the children outside eventually walked away from the junction, she still seated on the floor beside her couch with the curtains slightly closed, trying to convince herself that stress was beginning to affect her mind. But deep down she knew this was beyond stress. There was now a difference between fear and denial. And for the first time since returning from Aruchuku, denial was beginning to lose. By evening, the marks on her body had become darker. She noticed it while changing clothes before taking a shower. The tiny reddish scratches she had woken up with earlier now looked almost burnt into her skin. And the strange thing was that they no longer appeared random. The more she stared at them inside the bathroom, the more they looked arranged deliberately, almost like patterns, symbols. Kamsi quickly looked away from the mirror. She did not want her mind going into that direction. She took a quick bath and came out, trying hard to distract herself with work. But even editing videos now felt uncomfortable because every single clip from the festival carried that same heavy feeling around it. The atmosphere inside the recordings no longer looked like what she remembered experiencing physically in the village. In early life, the festival had felt lively and exciting at first, crowded, loud, beautiful, but inside the footage, everything looked tense from the beginning, as though the camera had captured something beneath the celebration that human eyes could not fully understand at the time. And the masquerade, the more she watched it, the more worse it became. At some point inside the raw footage, villagers appeared to be avoiding it completely without looking directly at it. Some people even moved backward before it reached them, as though they already knew where it would pass. Kamsi did not remember any of that happening physically. Then she reached the strangest parts. The moment the masquerade turned towards the camera, she paused the video immediately. Her breathing slowed because this time she noticed something new. Someone was standing behind the masquerade. Kamsi frowned deeply and leaned closer to the screen. The figure stood almost completely hidden among the raffle hanging from the masquerade's back, making it difficult to notice at first glance, but now she had seen it, she could not unsee it. It looked human, tall and very thin. Its face was impossible to see clearly because of the video distortion, but it appeared attached to the masquerade somehow, almost like something standing inside it while being separate from it at the same time. Kamsi's chest tightened immediately. No, she dragged the timeline backward again. The figure disappeared. Forward again, there, standing behind the camera, watching her. Kamsi's finger began trembling badly now. She quickly grabbed her phone and called Nengi again. This time, Nengi answered immediately. "You're crying?" Kamsi did not even realize tears had gathered in her eyes until that moment. "There's something inside the video," she whispered. "What do you mean?" Kamsi explained quickly while replaying the footage repeatedly. Nengi became quiet for several seconds after listening. Then she spoke softly. "Kamsi, delete it." "I can't." "You can. The video is already everywhere. Delete your own copy." Kamsi laughed nervously. "You think that changes everything now? You don't understand what you carried back." Kamsi became irritated immediately. "And you understand, Abi? Everybody suddenly acts like village prophet." "I'm serious." "So what exactly are you saying? That spirit entered my camera?" "I'm saying there are things people don't joke with for a reason." Kamsi rubbed her face tiredly and ended the call shortly after, but Nengi's words refused to leave her mind. There are things people don't joke with for a reason. The problem was that Kamsi had spent most of her life mocking exactly those kinds of warnings. That was partly why her content became popular online in the first place. She liked challenging fear. She liked entering places people avoided and proving that many African superstitions were exaggerated. But this one was no longer exaggerated. Night came slowly, and with that came fear again. By 11 p.m., Kamsi had locked every window and every door inside the apartment despite the heat. She switched on every light, including the kitchen light and bathroom light, because darkness now made her feel deeply uncomfortable. She tried watching random videos online to distract herself, but concentration became impossible. Every small sound inside the apartment made her tense. Every shadow looked suspicious. Around midnight, rain began falling heavily outside. Kamsi almost felt relief hearing normal environmental noise again because silence had started terrifying her even more than anything else. Then PHCN took light. Darkness swallowed the apartment instantly. Jesus Christ, she said under her breath. She quickly reached for her rechargeable lamp. Before she could turn it on, something moved inside the darkness. Not outside, inside her apartment. Kamsi froze immediately. The movement crossed slowly past the sitting room, a tall shape. The sound came first. Crack! The unmistakable dragging sound of raffia against the floor. Kamsi stopped breathing completely. The shape moved closely through darkness towards the passage leading to her bedroom. Kamsi's fingers shook badly as she finally switched on the rechargeable lamp. The weak yellow lamp filled part of the room instantly. Nothing stood there. The sitting room was empty again, but the dragging sound continued. Now from the kitchen. Kamsi almost screamed. The kitchen door moved slightly on its own. Something was moving again. Kamsi grabbed the nearest thing she could find, a small metal candle stand, and backed away slowly. The dragging stopped. Then came another sound, breathing, heavy breathing. Inside the kitchen, Kamsi felt her knees weaken already. Then slowly, the kitchen light came on by itself. Her blood turned cold instantly. Standing inside the kitchen was the Masquerade. This time it was closer than before, much closer. Its ruffled look wait now, dark and dripping slightly onto the tiles beneath it. The Masquerade looked up closer again, cracked in some places like dried wood left under hot sun. But the eyes were different because there was no eyes, only darkness filled the holes. Yet, somehow, Kamsi still felt it staring directly at her. The Masquerade tilted its head slowly, then something impossible happened. A second later, a second face appeared slightly forward from inside the mask, human, tiny and dark. Its mouth stretched unnaturally wide. Kamsi screamed violently and stumbled backward. Immediately, the kitchen lights exploded. Glasses scattered around the floor. Darkness swallowed the apartment again. Kamsi ran blindly towards the bedroom, slammed the door shut, and pressed her head against it with shaking hands. The dragging sound returned immediately outside the room, slow, patient, moving across the passage. Then the bells started ringing, soft at first, the exact bells from the festival. Kamsi covered her ears immediately as tears rolled down her face. The sound circled her bedroom slowly. Then came the voice again, not from outside, from inside the room. You should have left my face buried. Kamsi's heart nearly stopped because the voice sounded closer now, much closer, almost directly beside her bed. She turned slowly and saw it, the human face from inside the Masquerade, standing in the corner of her room, smiling at her. Kamsi screamed again, then everything went black. When she woke up the next morning, she was lying on the floor beside her bed. Sunlight filled the room quietly. For several seconds, she remained there, breathing heavily, trying to understand whether the entire night had been a nightmare. Then she noticed the floor. Wet mud covered part of the room. Long dragging marks stretched from the bedroom outside to the corner where she saw the face standing. And beside her lay one single Masquerade bell. Kamsi did not touch the bell for almost 10 minutes. She remained standing near the wall of her bedroom, staring at it while morning sunlight spread across the floor. And the longer she looked at it, the more unreal everything felt. The small bell looked old, darker than original brass, with tiny feathered symbols carved around it. And somehow that made the fear worse because it meant one thing clearly. Whatever happened the previous night had not stayed inside her head. The thing had entered physically. The wet mud on the floor proved it. The dragging marks proved it. And the bell lying beside her bed proved it more than anything else. Her phone began ringing suddenly on the floor. Nengi. Kamsi answered immediately. You sound terrible, Nengi said the moment she heard her breathing. Kamsi swallowed hard. It came inside the apartment. Silence followed instantly. The Negi asked again, "What happened?" Kamsi explained everything from the kitchen counter to the face she saw inside the masquerade and finally the bell she found after waking up. By the time she finished talking, Negi sounded frightened too. "You cannot stay there again. I know. You need help." Kamsi laughed quickly. "From who exactly?" Nengi hesitated briefly before answering, "Go back to the village." Kamsi became quiet immediately. The thought alone made fear tighten inside her chest. "Go back where?" "Back to Aruchuku. Back to the exact place where all this started." "No," she said quickly. "I'm not going back there." "Kamsi, listen to yourself. This thing followed you across states. There has to be another solution. What if there isn't?" Those words sat heavily inside the silence that followed. Deep down, Kamsi knew that Nengi was right because nothing else was working anymore. Prayer houses, anointing oil, deliverance sessions, nothing helped. The attacks only became worse. The previous evening, during a deliverance prayer in a church, Kamsi collapsed suddenly after screaming halfway through the session. Witnesses claim her voice changed while she was on the floor shaking violently. One woman even swore Kamsi spoke in an old man's voice briefly before fainting completely. That video had started spreading online too. Everything about her life had slowly turned into fear and confusion. And worst of all, people who watched the video on edited festival footage had started reporting strange experiences too. Not everybody, only those who watched the raw version till the end. One young man claimed he kept hearing bells outside his hostel window every midnight after watching the video. Another woman sent Kamsi voice notes crying because her child woke up screaming about the tall man with sleeves. Someone else claimed a figure appeared standing beside him while replaying the clip on his laptop. At first, Kamsi thought people were simply exaggerating for attention, until the messages became too detailed, too similar, too consistent, and then one of them died. That was when she knew that this was serious. The boy's name was Chidera, 22 years old, a University of Owerri. According to his friends, he watched Kamsi's unedited upload repeatedly because he wanted to create reaction content from it for TikTok. 3 days later, they found him dead inside his room. No sound of violence, no illness, nothing. But witnesses claim his room floor was covered with dry leaves and there was mud beneath his bed. The moment Kamsi heard that story, she finally broke down completely because now this thing was no longer affecting her only. Other people were becoming involved. Other people were suffering because of a video she refused to delete. By evening, she finally agreed to return to Aruchuku. The journey felt longer this time, much longer. Rain followed them till the entire road from Port Harcourt. Thick clouds covered the sky heavily, and the deeper they entered rural roads, the more uneasy Kamsi became. Nengi sat beside her quietly throughout most of the trips, while the driver focused silently on the muddy road ahead. Then somewhere after Ari-Riba Junction, the driver suddenly spoke. "You people are going for the festival, Matabi?" Kamsi felt cold immediately. "How do you know?" The man glanced at her through the mirror briefly. "Everybody's talking about that video online." Silence filled the car again. Then the driver added quietly, "You should not have filmed the masquerade." Kamsi looked away immediately. She was tired of hearing those words. But what disturbed her most was the expression on the driver's face. Not anger, but fear, real fear. By the time they reached Aruchuku, evening had already started falling, and immediately Kamsi entered the village again. She noticed something had changed. The atmosphere felt wrong, too quiet. The same village that looked lively during the festival now felt withdrawn, almost tense. Women avoided looking directly at her as she passed. Some men stopped talking completely when they saw her approaching. Nobody welcomed her warmly this time. It felt like she brought something dangerous back with her. Eventually, her local guard from the festival, a teen man named Obinna, agreed reluctantly to meet her near the village square. The moment he saw Kamsi, he shook his head slowly. "You should not have come back." Kamsi looked exhausted now. "Please, I need help." Obinna stared at her carefully for several seconds before speaking again. You uploaded the full footage? Kamsi nodded weakly. Obinna cursed under his breath immediately. What exactly is happening? Nengi asked impatiently. Everybody outside keeps talking in circles. Obinna remained quiet briefly before answering. That masquerade was never meant to be recorded. We know that already, Kamsi snapped back immediately. But why? Obinna looked away nervously before lowering his voice. Because that thing is not an ordinary masquerade. The air suddenly felt heavy around them. What do you mean? Kamsi asked slowly. Obinna hesitated, then finally spoke. Long ago, before now, that masquerade was part of an old cleansing ritual in this village. During certain years, it appears only once, not for entertainment, not for celebration, for sacrifice. Kamsi's stomach tightened immediately. What kind of sacrifice? Obinna looked uncomfortable now. People believe something enters it during the ritual. Silence followed instantly. Nengi folded her arms immediately. What thing? No one says its name openly. The wind moved slowly through the trees around them. Even the village suddenly felt quieter. Obinna continued carefully. The elders say the masquerade itself is not the problem. The problem is what works inside it. Kamsi felt cold all over again. During the festival, Obinna continued. There is a moment when cameras are forbidden completely because people believe the spirits inside the masquerade must not be carried outside the ritual ground. Kamsi's breathing slowed. Carried? Obinna nodded. Images carry memory. That is what the old people believe. Once you capture its face properly, you carried part of it away. The world suddenly felt smaller around Kamsi. She remembered the footage immediately. The way the masquerade behaved differently inside the recording, the way it walked towards her inside the video, even though it never was physically present. Then realization struck her completely. The footage changed because, she whispered. Obinna nodded slowly. They were not seeing costume anymore. Fear settled deeply into Kamsi's chest. Nengi spoke quietly now. So how do we stop it? Obinna looked towards the distant forest behind the village square. The elders already prepared for your return. Kamsi frowned immediately. What does that mean? But before Obinna could answer, the bell started ringing. The exact sound froze everybody instantly. The villagers nearby began rushing indoors immediately. Doors slammed shut around the square one after another. The atmosphere changed immediately. Kamsi's heart began pounding violently because she recognized that sound now better than anyone. The masquerade was coming. Obinna grabbed her arm immediately. Move! They hurried quickly through the village path while the bells grew louder behind them. The wind began rising strangely now. Dust moved across the floor. Then Kamsi heard it, the dragging sound. Closer than ever before, she turned instinctively and saw it. At the far end of the path, the masquerade stood motionlessly beneath the dry earth. But now she could finally see clearly what had been hiding inside. The human figure beneath the mask, tall, unnaturally thin. Its face stretched too long, its mouth hanging wide open than humanly possible while dark hollow eyes stared directly at her. Kamsi screamed immediately. The thing began moving towards them, not walking, gliding fast, much faster than before. The bells rang violently now. Villagers shut their windows completely. Nobody stopped nearby. Obinna dragged Kamsi harder. Don't look at it. But she already had. And the moment their eyes met fully, something inside her body shifted painfully. Kamsi collapsed instantly. The world around her became distorted. Voices echoed strangely. Then suddenly, she was no longer standing in the village path. She was back into the festival. Only this time, the square was empty. No villagers, no music, no drumming. Only the masquerade standing directly in front of her. And beneath the mask, the face smiled. You opened the road, it whispered. Kamsi tried moving backward, but her body refused. The thing leaned closer slowly. We were buried long ago, it continued softly. Now they have seen us again. Suddenly, thousands of whispers filled the square around her. Voices crying, praying, screaming. Kamsi covered her ears violently. Then she saw them. Figures standing all around the square. Tall, ruffled, covered bodies, watching silently from every direction. Not one masquerade, hundreds of them. The whisper grew louder, and Kamsi finally understood the real horror. The video had not only captured one spirit, it had exposed all of them. Then suddenly someone slapped her hard. The vision shattered immediately. Kamsi gasped violently and found herself lying on the ground inside a shrine surrounded by elders. An old woman knelt beside her, breathing heavily. "You nearly crossed over completely," she said. Kamsi burst into tears immediately. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, please." The old woman looked at her carefully. Sorry does not close doors once opened. The ritual lasted throughout the night: prayers, incantations, fire. The unedited footage was finally burned completely alongside the masquerade bell found in Kamsi's apartment. As dawn approached, the atmosphere slowly became lighter. The bell stopped, the wind calmed, and for the first time in days, the heaviness inside Kamsi's heart disappeared. By morning, she slept peacefully for the first time since leaving Arochukwu. Weeks later, her condition improved completely. The marks disappeared, the nightmares stopped, and gradually, life returned to normal again. Kamsi never posted another spiritual content videos after. Never. In fact, she stopped posting. She stopped traveling for dangerous content entirely. People online eventually moved on to newer trends, newer scandals, newer viral videos. But sometimes late at night, Kamsi still remembered the whisper from the square. "We were buried long ago." And even though the original footage was completely destroyed, 3 months later, somewhere in Lagos, a small upcoming content creator downloaded a reposted copy of the festival video from an abandoned Facebook page. Halfway through the footage, he paused suddenly because standing behind the masquerade, something inside the video had just moved. So after hearing this story, do you still believe every masquerade is just an ordinary costume? Or have you ever heard stories from your village about certain traditions people are never supposed to record or mock? If you've ever experienced anything strange connected to masquerade, village festivals, or spiritual traditions, drop your story in the comment section, because stories like this are more common than people think, and sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that sound impossible until somebody close to you experiences them. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and stay tuned for more African horror stories and folk tales, because trust me, some traditions are frightening for a reason.